How do you like working with, we are recording, by the way, so say nice things. How do you like working with Dan and Brian? And
They're absolutely terrible. The worst people. Oh, wait, sorry.
I think they are too. I'm like, Dan,
No,
you're so horrible, but I want you to have half of everything I do.
you must think I'm horrible then too, because Dan and Brian, like Vita, the systems people minded going on in there is just so amazing. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I, it's, jamming scale. It's different and it's really like, I'm such a huge fan of expanding my awareness and like just the way you all think about things and the questions you ask and
Hmm.
like I mean admittedly a lot of the questions that come back drive me nuts because I'm way on the visionary
Yeah, I
that
got
end of the
it.
spectrum,
I got it.
but
Like when we brought you into that meeting, I'm like, all right, we're either going to get on Nick's nerves or not. Because I had a lot of questions.
well it's super useful and we're live now and I'll tell you having somebody like Katya in our team meetings because we have systems people obviously um ever since like embracing that because I have a meeting with Dan and Brian every week and then hop on your guys' meetings.
Yeah.
um it's one of those it's kind of like I think of I go back to nutrition and exercise because that's my background obviously. It's like going to the gym sucks and
Hmm.
like eating the same food sucks,
Hmm.
but then once you start seeing the results
Yep.
you're like, oh shit, I want to go to the gym more.
Yep.
And that's what it's like having operating people. Like I have obviously a business partner that is the operating person, and then
Mhm.
you work with them, and it's like, fuck, God, they ask a lot of questions that don't matter. But then like I have more and more free time. We make more and more money. I have no doubt in my mind. And if you're listening to this and this seems like unrealistic to you, just tune in. Like just sit here and listen to Katya. I have no doubt every day. I wake up and I read and I write and I walk in circles. There is nothing on fire in my business ever. I know exactly when everything is getting done. And if it doesn't get done, because the way we communicate, the task based communication, right? I
Mhm.
know why it didn't get done. I know when it's going to get done. I know if I drop the ball because you guys tell me, Nick, you fucked up. Um, and so the result is like our profit margins are the highest they've ever been. I work more than ever, which probably is not what people expect to hear.
Mhm.
I work more than ever because I choose to, because I'm literally only doing the things I love to do. And
Mhm.
it's like, I don't have to work. I don't have that much to do. But I work all day because of what people like you, what Dan, Brian, um, and that whole team has brought. So if you're listening, that's why Katya is here, because I think a lot of us get into this business with, there's a few reasons, and no judgment here. I don't care why you got in business. Um, Impact, a shit ton of money, better life for your family.
Mhm.
And we all get led down this marketing and sales, right? Like marketing and sales is everything. It's the lifeblood of the business. And I think I've seen, and I'm curious as to your opinion, because I've seen pretty consistently with the number of businesses we work with about approximately, if you're really, really stubborn and you're really willing to just grind your face off, like even if you're great at marketing and sales, about, from what I've seen, like about 3 million a year is just where there's just a ceiling of like just bang your head up against the wall. And I don't know if that's what you've seen. I mean, revenue wise, lifestyle wise, but I see that if you never adopt the systems, the operations, the way we communicate and make decisions now in the business, there's this ceiling, and it's a hard ceiling,
Mhm.
and you're pushing so hard, right? Because if I make this much money, I'll finally be able to take a vacation, and you're pushing so hard that you just get further and further away from ever actually taking a vacation.
Yeah. I
So,
actually don't pay too much attention to revenue. I pay attention to profit and time and
mhm.
energy. And that ceiling
that's
is way lower than 3 million revenue.
oh
Can you
yeah,
say that?
that's that's the other big shift, and that's the other thing I want to preface this with is here's the fundamental shift I want you to make as you listen to Katya, because we got some people piling on here now.
Mhm.
a lot of us are saying there's two things. The first one is when I ask people, what do you want your life to look like? Without fail, 9 times out of 10, they give me a revenue number, right? That's because that's where our brain goes. I didn't ask how much revenue you want to generate. That's what you want your life to look like. So that's the question I want you to keep in mind as Katya talks is what do I want my life to look like? How do I build my business to facilitate this life, not this arbitrary revenue goal that you pulled out of your ass somewhere?
Yeah.
That's probably the most important thing. The other thing is another question to ask yourself. It's along the same lines. Tell yourself, you don't have to type it anywhere or tell us, how much do I make right now? And then ask yourself, how much do I want to make? And typically what happens is I do 20 grand a month, right? I say, cool. What does your life look like? And I'm like, man, it's really like I'm grinding my face off, yada, yada, yada. I say, okay, what do you want to make? And they go 80 grand a month. I said, what does your life look like given your current processes at 80 grand a month? Mm-hmm. And that's when it's like, oh, you can't 4X what you're doing, right?
No, you can't.
So that's why Katya's here, because tell me, because I've seen it and I've seen Dan do it. Who do you like? Who do you have the biggest impact on? What's the business owner look like? Where are they at? And then you come in and what are the most immediate results?
Yeah. So I actually work with the people that tell me they can't scale. Those are my favorite people because I usually end up proving them wrong majority of time, is the service-based businesses, the agencies, the consultants, the coaches, the people that have something that they feel like they're the only person that can ever do it right and do it the way that it's supposed to be done, that there's no way to create a repeatable process or system out of this or to be able to scale it. Or they've probably had issues with hiring and they've just hired the wrong person and the person they thought it was the right person, they didn't do the right things. And I work with a lot of visionaries and creatives that have a lot of ideas and not enough time to implement them. And they just want to focus on the creative, strategic aspects of things, you know, speaking and traveling and marketing and stuff like that, talking to people, partnering up, collaborating with people. I'm just a naturally like systems minded person. And I can come in and spot the gaps and fill in the processes that people were like, I can't make this into a system. I'm like, actually, yes, you can. You just haven't known how to yet. Those are my favorite. What I like getting people to is kind of like I have too much free time on my hands and I'm kind of bored.
Yep.
What do I do with my time? And it's like, you get to do what you love now, whatever that looks like. That might be family. I tend to work with a lot of families that are about to have newborns. Mothers start reaching out to me at the right time. I also work with just people that want to work more, but in the strategic, creative aspects. So they start doing more of that, partnering up, starting other businesses, other projects and stuff like that. Yeah, those are my favorite people.
Yeah, that's me. That's why I have a Dan is...
Yeah.
The number one question I get for Nixmas, right? The 12 days of Nixmas was, how do you manage so much? And like, honestly, I don't. I just show up and do what I do. And then my systems people, they ask me questions that because there's this intellectual property or there's this way of operating, right? That like it might be a mindset thing too, where we think like, you can't replicate me, you know? And then I saw Dan do it for the first time. And
it's amazing, isn't it? Like,
it's incredible. It opens up this whole new world of where like I'm making more money than I was and I have nothing to do. And then for the creative people, it's like almost overwhelming. Like, hey, what am I going to build next?
I've seen people get legit anxious. They're like, I should be doing something, right? Am I dropping the ball somewhere? I'm like, if you take a look here, you're not dropping any balls. You're not missing any details. You actually have nothing to do. So, and people are like, okay. I think people are addicted to non-essential busy work that they think is growing their business or scaling their business. And then when they actually get everything that they need to get done and their business is growing, it's profitable, the team is running, the systems are running, and they're like, well, what do I do now? It's that addiction to busy that has them like, I should be doing something. There's something I'm missing. And it's actually not, they have to shift completely out of that. And that's a fun process to watch. That's a fun shift to watch for sure.
Yeah, I've been there. There was a little anxiety. I actually went on, I think we talked while I was traveling. I think we talked while I was
Yeah.
in New York.
I think you experienced my anxiety too. I'm like, I'm bored. I need something to do. You experienced that for me too.
Yeah.
There's different levels to it.
We went from, just give people an idea of like, we went from zero to about $100,000 a month pretty quick, which is usually like, it'd be overwhelming, right? That's about the fastest that would have built from zero to something. And I was so like, because I have a Katya and a Dan and a Vita and a Brian, which those are my operating people. I just went on a 6-week trip. Like I didn't know what to do. I just calendar off for 6 weeks. We went to like 10 different cities, 9 different states. And you think of like, most people look at their business and don't think that will be possible anytime soon, right? Like 6 weeks, my calendar off. Yeah, right. Things would freaking explode. But it's possible. And so here's just some insight I want you to share. Systems. Mm-hmm. When I say systems, it's actually a really difficult thing to sell because once you're experiencing it, it is pretty, like, it's not super sexy on the surface, but once you're living it, it's like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we say systems, right? We say systems, operations, stuff like that. People think we just write down a list of things that need to get done and set up some zaps, which I think is why it just doesn't seem so. Tell me and the people listening, when you say systems, operations, how do you explain what it is?
Yeah, I usually take 2 very confused keywords, and that's growth and scale, because systems and operations and processes are part of scaling. And you see a lot of people selling how to scale your business to whatever. And when you actually get into those programs or webinars or whatever, they're actually teaching growth. So growth is, if you look up in the dictionary, is literally the increase of, for us, a revenue, a number of clients, a number of leads, whatever. And so most of the programs and people selling how to scale and setting up systems and stuff are actually teaching more marketing and sales strategies for growth. What scaling is the opposite side of that. Or not the opposite side, but the side that you need that people actually don't realize that they need. It's like, if you are increasing in this number, is your capacity increasing along with it? And so when you scale, you are increasing your capacity, or you have the capacity to handle the increase of growth over here on this side. And so what systems, operations, processes, team building, all of that stuff is doing for you is increasing your capacity to have more of that growth that you want. And that's why people hit that income ceiling or revenue ceiling or profitability ceiling or even time ceilings, because they are doing this work that is not set up in a way that's repeatable or automated or delegated. And so they cannot scale their efforts in their growth of leads, time, income, profit, revenue, so on. So when I explain that, people are like, oh yeah, I didn't realize I've been focusing on growth. I thought I was scaling, but actually I've been trying to grow my business. But you can't grow more than the capacity that you have. You just can't.
Yep. Yeah, we see that 3 million mark is where, like, it doesn't matter how much, in my experience, and this is service-based, great people that can market and sell their face off. Like, they're great at it. Mm-hmm. No matter how much they focus on that growth, no matter what channels they go to, how much money they spend, right? Whether it's because they don't have the capacity or it's leaking out the back end or whatever, there's that, it just doesn't. And so you put all these resources into growing. And it almost becomes like a Pyrrhic victory. Like, you just blow all your resources trying to grow, but you don't have the capacity. So there's all this effort and you're not really moving the needle.
No.
Another thing really interesting to me that Dan brought to the table that I think you do really well is, and people don't think about this. There's 2 things that stand out to me, and then I just want to let you kind of educate. One is the idea of setting up communication standards that make sense, because this is like mastery mode is like my 6th business or 7th business, right? Mm-hmm. And I had no idea, because you don't know what you don't know. And so I'd walk around and be like, hey, Brandon, can you do this, this, and this? Cool. Thanks, man. Go back to my office or walk out. And then a good friend of mine came, Dr. Kashi, came to live with me and work with me, and we built a business. And one time we walked out and he said, Nick, I don't think you know what you're asking Brandon to do. I'm like, no, it's really easy. Like, he's just going to do. And he's like, yeah, but he's not you. He doesn't know where all that stuff is. And it really made me start thinking about that kind of stuff. And so what I did really was I started keeping it all in. Like, I just was afraid of overwhelming. And then what we built in mastery mode, right, is a communication system. And this might not even be intentional. I'm just telling you from my experience. When I'm like, I got this idea, the way I have to communicate it to you guys, it actually makes me feel the pain of the pressure I'm putting on my business.
Yeah.
And like if you don't want that, if you're a visionary and you don't want then you're going to have a really hard time scaling. And so part of it was like, we built this communication system that made me feel, a lot of times I'm like, oh, I got this great idea. And I go to communicate it and I'm like, nah, it's not that important, because I can't just walk in and scream at everybody and tell them what to do. Right. Can't pop in it. We don't have a Slack channel for that reason. I can't go in Slack and be like, hey guys, got a new idea. It's a systematic communication. And then the other thing is determining what's the end goal. Right. And then our whole entire business is set up so that every move we make, does this get us closer to our end goal or not? It might make us more revenue. It might open up some new relationships. It might do all this cool shit. But if our end goal is to work 3 hours a week and make this much money and yada, 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 then we have like these bumpers. It's like the game operation when you get close to the side. We have those set up in the business where it's like, nope, that sounds cool, but that's not why we built this business.
Yep.
And so those are the two things that stand out the most to me. And even though the system, the way like the spreadsheets and all that stuff is not the way my brain works, once I see how much it frees me up and how liberating it is, it's like, I'm just like, you guys do your thing. You tell me what you need. I'll do it however, because I have so much free time. And, you know.
Yep.
So tell us, this is what I want. This is what I want more than anything for everybody here. How do you know? What do you tell yourself, or what do you recognize? How do you know? Because a lot of people in here have maybe just validated their offer. A lot of them might do 50 grand a month and been stuck there for a while. How do you know when your systems and your operations are your limiting factor? What's the sign, or what are the signs?
That's a good question, because I normally take one look at somebody's business and I'm like, all right, yeah, you need ops. Yep. Or no, you actually don't. You need to go somewhere else. So I've never actually sat down and explained this out. I think the first thing that I look at is where somebody's time is going. And if their time is going more towards putting out fires and dealing with silly, simple mistakes, or micromanaging their team is a big one, actually. Oh my God, yeah. Now that I think of it, micromanaging their team or themselves, like these long task lists in like a Trello board or a Asana project, and it just keeps getting longer and longer, and nothing's really getting done, or no one really knows who's doing what and when and where and why and how. If they're setting the same goals multiple quarters in a row and they're not hitting those goals, they're not even close. Those are some of the red flags that I see. And then of course, like more on the personal side, like if they're getting sick, if they're getting burnt out, like burnout is not like oh, poor me, I'm so tired. It's like, no, like I can't get out of bed. I'm burnt out. Like I've been there. Not fun. And I like the warning signs of that is just a lot of health issues like adrenal fatigue and just like not sleeping enough, not eating, not even like going to the bathroom when you need to go to the bathroom. Like that's a red flag to me. And it's like, okay, there's something going on in your business that makes you prioritize that over just taking care of your body in the natural way it needs to be taken care of. And I usually see like people posting on Facebook about it in a way that is not prioritized. Like, I don't think people realize how big of a deal burnout is and how big of a deal having an operations problem in your business is. And then so they're like, oh, haha, I'm like experiencing this. And I did the same exact thing. And people will be like, you need to take care of that. And it's just like, oh, okay, I will. And it's more of the, again, focus on the growth aspect. It's like, if I hit this revenue point, then I will be set for life and good to go and stuff like that. And if they're really good marketers and salespeople, they should be hitting those goals. And so that tells me that it's an operations problem, not a marketing skill or sales problem. And that's just a hard realization to make for most people, because people like to wait until it's like worst case scenario. Like me, I lived in an apartment with mold for a year. I knew something was wrong. I had an inkling it was mold, but it wasn't until I was in the hospital like once a month, and the doctors are like giving me prednisone and steroid shots in my butt, like not fun stuff. And then my doctor's like, you have mold, get a mold test. It took that much for me to admit that there was a problem. I see that happening in business all the time. And I've done that before too with burnout. It's just so hard to admit that it's like the thing that is not sexy and the thing that you don't want to do, but you know you need to do, is the thing that's causing problems in your business. And so it's either you're going to do something about it or you're not. And most people know deep down inside, but just would rather focus on like the sexy stuff, you know?
Yep. It's that distinction between growth and scale. Cause I've never, heard it articulated that way, but I think there's people assume they're synonymous, right? And it's that, you know, everybody's searching for that water faucet of leads that Facebook is promising, and never mind that we got a leaky bucket. So what's the point, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So if you can market and you can sell, right? This is where this is kind of when because I can pretty much tell like, hey, you need some of my systems people, right? And it's really, the easiest thing for me is to say, okay, so what needs to get done? Well, this, okay, who's responsible for that? Well, it just depends. Whoever sees it first, or, you know, like whoever gets and like that to me is like, all right, if you don't know who's responsible for what, because that's where I was forever. I was like, hey, will somebody just do this? And then you get a lot of blame shifting. You just get a lot of goofy stuff without the systems, the operations.
I would end up doing it. I'm such a control freak and a perfectionist that I would be like, oh, don't worry, I got it. If you're not going to handle it as quickly as I want it handled, then I'll handle it on top of everything else that I'm doing. That's another red flag. You have a team of 10, but you're still doing everything yourself.
Yep. And there's no scale built into that, right? Like every sale you make requires more time and energy from you, which is the opposite of scalability, right? Okay, so let's say we're there, whatever. We're doing all these menial tasks. We don't know what's supposed to get done. A big one for me is like laying in bed at night, like, oh shit, did this get done? Who was supposed to do this? You know, what am I supposed to do? Because even as the visionary, like, what the hell am I supposed to do? Sometimes that's where do we start? When you come into a business, because here's one thing I love that we do in the system is, and we look at, because you mentioned taking care of yourself, right? And we forget about that. We forget that like it's all just one big thing. Like you can't neglect yourself and expect your business to thrive. So we assess, even in the systems training we have, right? It's like the entrepreneur, let's look at your schedule, your life, your habits. Are you taking care of yourself? And then we look at the business separately, which is extreme. Like to me, it's like, duh, right? Because a lot of us just look at the business and say, I'll take care of myself later, right? So we look at the entrepreneur and then we look at the business separately. So if you look at somebody's business, go, oh, you need me. Where do you start? What's the very first thing? Or is there a decision, you know, if then? What does that look like?
Normally I start out by putting out the fire because that's just what's going on in the current moment. If there's a really big fire, like there's a current launch or there's problems with clients or whatever, like we'll handle that first. But honestly, the overall first start place for everybody is their time and where they're putting their time. And like people just, this is across the board. There's no judgment here, but we just don't have an accurate picture of where we put our time sometimes, like especially when people are like really, really busy. And so I'll have people install rescuetime.com. It's free. It runs in the background. It's a set it and forget it. And I'll literally tell them to set it and forget it. And then I'll check it 2 or 3 weeks later. And I'm like, interesting. So you're telling me you don't have enough time to set up systems or do your high leverage work, which is something in the system we work on, is making sure we time block high leveraged tasks and strategic tasks first, and making sure that your schedule actually makes sense for what you're trying to do, free up some time. But people will still come up with the excuse, I don't have time. And it's like, well, it seems like you're spending like 40 hours a week on admin tasks. Is this something that you can delegate? And why haven't you already? And they're like, oh, well, I just feel like I could do it faster. And if I just did it myself, it's like, well, it's 40 hours of time that if you delegate it, it might take some work up front to delegate it, but then you buy yourself back 40 hours. So you have a choice to make here. And there's just so many decisions to make about where people put their time, what type of schedule they even want. A lot of people are like, I've never even sat down to think about my schedule, let alone time block, let alone set a time for high level strategic tasks that I actually want to work on, that's actually going to grow my business, because I've just been putting out fires and working on all the busy work. And I try to do like a good, better, best schedule. Like what schedule can we do right now? And what's actually the best case scenario? Like what do people actually want? Which goes back to what we talked about. It's like, what do you want your life to look like? People spit out a revenue. But what about your time? Like if you have a family, do you want to be spending the mornings with your kids? Or if you have like a workout class you want to go to, are you going to put that in your schedule? Or are you just going to say maybe later? Right. And so mapping that out for people, just like people either react overwhelmed or like relieved. I never see an in between or both.
I've had people that have run agencies after they come into the system, they talk to you or Dan or Brian, and they're just like, after the very first, because it's an intensive, right? After the very first intensive, like they'll message me and be like, I'm so glad you connected me with Dan or Katya, whatever. Like I literally got 10 times my investment back. And like Sarah went from, it took her 40 hours to do a client project on average down to 8.
Yep. Just
by eliminating the context switching and just, again,
yes.
What do you want your calendar to look like? And now every decision we make, is that getting closer to this new calendar or not? And it just draws that line. So rescuetime.com. I just put a link in the comments if you guys want to.
Yes. Rescue Time does not lie. It sends a weekly report of like, it tracks all the websites, all of the browsers, all of the apps that you're active on, even private browsing. So be careful if you're doing stuff in private browsing, it will track it. Warning. But it's just easy for people to tell me like, oh, I don't have time, or I spend this much time on marketing and sales. And then I realized, actually, no, you don't. You spend maybe a couple of hours and you're spending all the rest of the hours on client fulfillment and onboarding and admin work and stuff that can be systemized or delegated.
Yeah. So that's number one for everybody. I would agree 100%. It's one of the days of Nixmas, right? Is sit down and be ruthless about your calendar. Because I promise when I actually did that, I was like, okay, that's everything. There is so much white space in here. Like, how did I spend so much time doing this stuff?
Yep. And if there's no white space, that means boundaries and saying no more and prioritizing. So that goes into goal setting, which I would say is, I think time management and goal setting kind of go hand in hand. Because sometimes I'm pretty clear on somebody that's just like, they just need to clear up the calendar first before they even think about goals, because they can't think about goals with the amount of chaos going on in their calendar. But some people need to get clear on their goals first and then see like, okay, when am I going to do this? But actually setting clear goals, both personal and business, and clarifying what you are going to be doing for like the next month or 3 months, changes things, because it's so easy to get ideas and work on the next shiny thing and not really get to where you want to be going. Yeah, it's kind of like going on Google Maps and placing the marker in, like, let's say I'm going from Atlanta to New Jersey, but then I start driving west, and it's like, well, I would know that's wrong because Google Maps is going to repeat like 20 times that you need to U-turn, and it's going to annoy you. And so that's kind of how I see goal setting. It's like this goal setting will tell you to U-turn if you are not focused on this. And if it helps you set boundaries and helps you set your schedule really well as well.
Well, that's what you guys are for me, right? Like, we sit down and say, Nick, where do you want to go? What's your business look like? I say, this is what I want. And then I spend the next 3 months irritated because you guys are like, no. Hey, stop doing that other thing. But that's why we get to our destination.
Yes.
And you don't get mad at Google Maps. It's irritating, but you're like, thank God I have this thing.
Right? I have clients that I've been working with for, I can think of one person that I've been working with since November of last year. So a little over a year. And I keep going back to that initial call that I had with them, the initial intensive I did with them, and where we set their goals. And whenever they come to me with a complaint or a different idea, I'm like, do you remember our first call? And they're like, oh my God, again with the first call. That was over a year ago. And I'm like, you need to hit that goal. It was a big goal and you are like this close. So many people stop like right short of their goal because they get distracted or because they forget or because they don't have the accountability in the systems. And it's like, you're like right there. If you just see it through to completion, that's amazing. Just keep going and have that consistency, have the systems, have the team and the resources to do that. And that changes the game of business. Not many people do that. Not many people are consistent and seeing things through to completion. And so you've just eliminated most of your competition by doing so.
Yep. You look at, I just read a book called Outsiders, which I strongly recommend. It's the 8 highest performing CEOs against the market at the time. And the recurring theme was focus. It was actually the two, there's 3 recurring themes. One of them was heavy focus on operations, right? Focus, saying no to a lot of stuff. And then the other one was, it was decentralized, everything else. Operations and asset allocation were centralized. And that's, there it is right there. Top 8 businesses of all time. Operation focus and getting shit done focus. So get your time back. Okay. Sit down, audit your calendar, use rescue time. And then if your calendar is full and it's time to delegate, this is how I'm going to give you the framework of what I see. Because I've seen Dan do it a few times, and then you just fill in the holes because I'm probably way off. But it's like, these are the tasks that you need to get. I think of an org chart, right? And like task oriented.
Yes.
These are the things that need to get done, right? Who does this? And in this case, it would be like Nick, which is not the case anymore. But then is it a matter of identifying, where do we want to get you out of first? And then how do we do that? Because I know the fear. Everybody listening, I know what your biggest fear is. How do you get out of doing that and protecting the quality and the margins, right? Because everybody's like, I can't hire somebody. It's expensive. So how do you justify plugging somebody else in and systematically remove them while protecting the cash flow and the margins?
Yeah. So where you started was right, is the org chart and setting what the roles and responsibilities are, what the tasks are within that. I think the most important thing is getting clear on each role and what they're responsible for, even more so than tasks, because tasks is easy. You can just get a VA in the Philippines and delegate tasks, but bringing somebody on that is responsible for a part of the business or a process. Good distinction. That is really important. That's how you build a good team with that and lead a good team. The next thing, like, honestly, I tend to customize this depending on the person, but usually it goes back to where are people spending the most of their time and what's the high leverage work. I tend to delegate admin stuff first because people feel the safest, it's the cheapest, and they can dip their toe in the water and see, but some people are ready to just jump into it and delegate the biggest bottleneck of their business. And so and this takes all of the different pieces. So like, where is your time going? What are your goals? What's your profitability right now? What does your team look like right now, if you do have a team? And what does this org chart look like? And what piece of the org chart do you want to be in, actually? And after looking at all of those pieces, you can usually determine, okay, like, what is the bottleneck? What is the thing holding you back from getting to those goals and getting to that place in your business? And that is usually the first place that we hire. Because let's say if you put the time, money, and resources into hiring this person, that again goes back to growth and scale. Your growth is here and it's capped by this capacity. You increase your capacity by this much, you're able to increase your revenue and your growth by this much. And you can also implement things that decrease your overhead and your expenses and stuff like that. Like, I see people wasting so much money on very unnecessary expenses that we can just cut out and hire a team member or set up a good process or system for, and it increases profitability a lot. But also the important thing is, like, you have to be willing to do something that you haven't done before to get a result that you haven't gotten yet. And I think by playing it safe and not taking that risk, and I'm not saying just like hire any random person off of the street. Like, there are things that you need to have set up before you hire. Like, I just spent like an hour and a half with one of the systems members, like building out a whole hiring plan. Like, this is something very serious that you want to like hire the right person for the right position in your business. But you have to take that step and just go for it. Put the work up front and put the money and resources up front for those long-term gains. Oh my God, I can't even say that right now. If you do that, you'll see your business grow exponentially, and not like a quick, like, I think people are just comfortable in I'm going to do this myself, see a spike in cash, but then a dip because I have to fulfill all of that, or I have to do all of this work. And now I'm going to go market and do the strategic work that I really want to be doing, and I see a spike again, versus all right, I'm going to put the work in. I'm going to hire this person. I'm going to do the right systems and processes that I have to do to hire this person. And then the growth just goes exponentially, and you're doing your zone of genius work, and your team is doing the right things, the systems, the processes, and all of that stuff. And that's just more, it's funny. That is security, in my opinion. But I think people are just like comfortable. And I know the feeling, because it took me a minute. I'm a control freak. I'm a perfectionist. It took me a long time to outsource anything. But the first person I hired still works with me 7 years later.
Yep.
And that was like the best investment I ever made in my business.
There's a pretty consistent theme, because, I talk about it and I send people to the system and they work with you or Dan or Brian or Vita. And I'm always, hey, what's going on? Let me know. I just want feedback. I want to make sure people are taken care of. And like clockwork, there's a few exceptions, but anybody, we have a guy that was doing, I want to say his overhead was $101,000 a month at a pretty big agency.
Okay.
And sat down with Dan and did exactly what you're talking about. Like, okay, we got to make some changes. Let's just look at all these extraneous costs and redundant software. Came back $55,000 a month.
Yep.
There's $45,000 a month in just stuff that's accumulated that wasn't.
Yep.
So that pays for like 10 staff members.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So there's, if you're systematic and the way you guys operate, it just pays for itself, right? Like, before we hire somebody, you could probably find the money slipping through the cracks to afford that person, or map out a plan real quick. Like, yeah, you got to make this investment, but because you'll be doing this, you'll make it back 3, 4, 5 times
easily. Yeah. So
it's get control of your time, your calendar, figure out what you need to delegate, build out a plan for how do you set up your first hire? Because this is everybody's, but once you do it once or twice, it's like, even if you're doing it all wrong, you get comfortable with doing it. It's not foreign anymore. How do you set up your first hire for success? And then we'll answer that question. And then what we'll do is we'll go dark. And if you're in the vault, go into the vault. There's a link to get on the Zoom call, and you'll have a couple minutes to ask anything you want of Katya. But first, let's give everybody publicly, what are the steps what are the first steps you could take to make sure, because a lot of times we hire somebody and we think they're an absolute moron when the fact is they can't read our minds.
Yep.
And we have not set them up to succeed. So how do you set up that first hire? Because that's the one that, like, you do it, and if it goes unsuccessfully, you're scarred for life and you're afraid to ever do it again, or you're just afraid to do it at all, or you do it wrong and then you have a really shitty relationship. Mm-hmm. So walk us through that.
Yeah. I try to map it out as a funnel, because I tend to work with a lot of creative marketers and salespeople, and they just get the funnel. And it's like, the funnel is a journey for this client to a sale, basically. And it like, if you're taking a complete stranger into a sale, like, what are the steps that need to happen to get that person to convert, right? Same thing for hiring. This is a complete stranger to your business. Even if they're a friend or a friend of a friend or a colleague or whatever, they are a stranger to the back end of your business and to the way that you think and the way that you want to run your business. And so you essentially need to set up kind of like that funnel of like, okay, if they're a complete stranger, what's the very next thing that they need to know about the business? Usually that is, what is the business? What is the company? What are the values and the culture and stuff like that? Who's the team in it? What's the tech stack that we use? And so it just goes step by step by step, and just mapping this out in a way that onboards a team member fully. And this is like, honestly, it doesn't even need to be perfect. It just needs to be something, some type of onboarding for a team member, because so many people don't do this. And this is, I think, the biggest mistake. The biggest thing that's missing when hiring a team member is just having a way to explain what it is that you're doing, why it is that you're doing it, and what needs to be done, what they are responsible for, and what that looks like what good results looks like and what bad results looks like. That way they have their own like thermometer of like, okay, if this is going this way, I need to communicate and something needs to happen, and everyone in the team needs to be aware so that that doesn't continue to go downhill and cause like really big problems. Same thing for hiring. If you're hiring on like a website, like on Upwork or Hubstaff, there's a lot of copy and paste responses. So making people jump through hoops, just like we would have somebody opt into your email list, like have specific questions that actually give you real answers, like real world answers. Like I will tell people to give mock tests in an interview. Like if you need to have somebody do this very important process and you are dialed in and clear on what that process is, you've documented, you've done all the systems work, process work to set that up, and you just need to find the right person to do it that can do it well and follow instructions. Give a sample project, a tiny little thing. Like one example is I was applying for a coding bootcamp called Hack Reactor in San Francisco, and they had an application. This is like the Hack Reactor funnel was, they had an application I had to fill out, and then they reviewed it and they approved it. Then they gave me a coding project, and so I did the coding project. They reviewed it, and then I got on video and I had to do more coding, and they reviewed it, and they told me on the call, like, no, you're messing this up and you're messing this up. I was really bad. And then we did a video interview. Like that was a 4-step process to me applying to pay them to be in their program. Okay. So why aren't we doing the same thing for hiring to pay somebody else to do something for us that is probably crucial in our business? Like we need to actually sit down and take the steps to make sure that we are hiring the right person. And there's like many more ways that we can do this and many questions and stuff like that. But the important thing is that you have something there, something to give accountability either to that person or to yourself to onboard that person and make sure that you brought in the right person in the first place.
Yep. So that's really the biggest, right? Like that's a huge hump. If you just listen, if you watch this particular training and you just sit down, work out your calendar, figure out what you can delegate, figure out where can I cut costs, or figure out what will I do with this free time? Does it justify? And then screen, right? Then like you're on your way to your first employee. And I really think that's when you have one employee or one staff member or a partner even that you just like, is just they're just getting stuff done and you don't have to worry about it. Business, you said it earlier, business becomes a whole different game. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a new opportunity. So I'm thinking I'll show maybe tomorrow. If you guys want to hop on tomorrow, I'll show you the thing, like our onboarding SOPs, right? Or we call it an EOP because it's always evolving and it's supposed to be an efficient operating procedure. I'll actually do a walkthrough. I don't want to do it today with Katya because I want to get some Q&A in.
And I have a flight too.
Oh yeah, Katya's flying here for our network event. So if you're not coming to the network event, you're missing out. So we'll go dark, and then tomorrow I'll walk you through, because when you see how these EOPs are built, I've never seen anything like it, and it's just it eliminates a lot of the searching, the context switching, the like read my mind. You don't have to, because we build it into the actual operating procedures. So Katya, best way for people, obviously Katya's part of the system. If you want to talk to her, work with her, you can harass me. I will screen you so you don't waste her time. But best way for people to binge on your stuff, where can they go? Yeah,
just search Katya Sarmiento across the board on all social media. You'll find me. And don't hesitate to reach out to. I will love answering messages, comments below in this live stream as well. I'll be checking them. I have them open. But I'm mainly on Facebook and Instagram. Perfect.
I'm going to tag you here too on the fan page, and we're going to go dark. And if you are in the vault, we got 3 people in there now. I'm just going to pull you on, and you can jam